We are family. Showtime family.
The year was 1804. The western half of America was a wild and uncharted country. The people who lived there were called Indians by the white men who dwelt in a land beyond the sunrise. That year, a 17-year-old Shoshone girl named Sacagawea came to the village of the Mandans on the great river called the Missouri. Sacagawea was many suns and many sleeps from her home in the Rocky Mountains. As a child, she was stolen by the Minatares in a raid on the Shoshones and carried far across the prairie. Many times since then, she'd been sold like a horse from one tribe to the next. A girl who spoke a tongue nobody could understand, who was good for little except fetching firewood. But as the years passed, she blossomed like a prairie flower. Soon after Sacagawea was sold to the Mandans, she became the wife of a white trapper named Toussaint Charbonneau, of the tribe called the French. The Mandans loved to gamble, and Charbonneau won her in a game of the rolling bones. "My name means bird," she told him in the finger language. "Your fingers are beautiful," the trapper said, "and you will be my own sweet bird." Now the same year, Sacagawea became the wife of Charbonneau. A band of 30 white soldiers, led by Captains Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, came up the Missouri River on a very special mission to explore the unknown lands of the West. As the autumn wind blew bitter, the white soldiers stopped at the village of the Mandans. The Mandans were a wealthy, generous people. They raised beans and squashes and lived in big, warm lodges made of earth. "Do not venture further this year, or you will perish in the snows," the Mandan chief warned the white men. "Stay here with us until the spring." Gladly, they did. Now when the Captains Lewis and Clark heard there was a Frenchman with a Shoshone wife in the village, they sent for Charbonneau and Sacagawea. The white soldiers sat with the Mandan chiefs by the flickering firelight inside the grandest lodge. "We are scouts for the chief of all the white chiefs," said Captain Clark, whose hair was as red as the fox's fur, and his face full of sunshine. Then Captain Lewis spoke. "We do not know the lands that lie beyond the mountains, or the people who live there. Will you come with us and help us speak with your people? We seek the way to the Western Ocean." Lewis was dark-headed with a sad and thoughtful face. He reminded Sacagawea of her long-lost brother, Camawayat, who was just becoming a man when she was kidnapped. Charbonneau was eager to join the expedition. His skill as a hunter would help supply the soldiers with meat, and he too wished to explore the mysterious lands of the far west. Thus was it settled. Sacagawea and Charbonneau would come with the expedition. A winter as cold as any of the old toothless ones could remember roared out of the north. Before the winter was over, Sacagawea gave birth to a baby. The child was a boy, and they named him Baptiste, after Charbonneau's father. But Captain Clark liked to call him Pompey, after the great Roman general. "My boy Pomp," Captain Clark would always cry with delight upon greeting the child. When the ice broke up on the Missouri, and flocks of geese winged north in such numbers that they sometimes dimmed the sun, Lewis and Clark declared that it was time to set out on their journey. The expedition now numbered 35. 2 other French mountain men were recruited for the adventure. Georges Drouillère, a superb scout, and Pierre Cruzat, an expert boatman who loved to play the fiddle when the day's traveling was done. Then there was York, who was a great wonder to all the tribes along the Missouri who'd never seen an African man before. Finally, there was Scammon, Captain Lewis's beloved Newfoundland dog, as big, furry, and dark as a bear. Everyone was in splendid health and spirits the April morning of their departure. Captain Lewis loved adventure and wrote in his diary that this moment was among the happiest of his life. The expedition set out up the Missouri in a fleet of little boats. 6 of these were dugout canoes, hollowed out by fire from the trunks of cottonwood trees. 2 more were called pirogues, extra long canoes large enough to hold 8 people and plenty of cargo. Every chance they got, Lewis and Clark and the men collected strange new plants, birds, even snakes and lizards that had never been seen back in the East. The men kept diaries. They recorded the weather, preserved flowers, and measured anything they could. Trees, animals, hills, even hailstones. Sacagawea did not know this science of the whites, but she knew the secrets of the land. In spring, when vegetables were scarce, she showed the soldiers how to find hordes of the sweet helianthus root that the mice collect among the river driftwood. she could find honey by observing the flight of a single bee. When the soldiers' boots began to wear out, she taught them how to sew moccasins out of elk skin, how to soak them in water and walk them dry so they fit perfectly. The river was a constant hazard, especially in the high water of springtime when the undercut banks gave way and whole trees toppled into the water. One drizzly morning, a floating log rammed the canoe Sacagawea was riding in with such a blow that it capsized. "The compass!" Captain Lewis cried from another boat. "For heaven's sake, save the compass!" While Charbonneau swam to shore with the baby, Sacagawea dived repeatedly for the great brass compass. She was a stronger swimmer than any of the soldiers, and while they struggled in the water like baby buffalo, she rescued the precious instrument from the bottom of the river. After that mishap, the journey up the Missouri proceeded well, but slowly, as spring crept on and the days grew warmer. The high plains stretched out in all directions as far as the eye could see. And everywhere animals grazed peacefully on tender green spring shoots. Buffalo by the tens of thousands. Elk and deer grazing everywhere. The expedition ate gloriously well, and at night, after a feast of buffalo chops and wild plums, out came Cruzat's fiddle. He played reels and jigs, songs about sweethearts back home, and the beautiful quadrille of New Orleans. Sacagawea thought, "These young white men are crazy, but they are gentle, like Shoshone colts playing in the mountain meadows." They had come more than 1,000 miles up the Missouri from the Mandan village. The river was now so shallow in places that they sometimes had to drag their canoes upstream with ropes. And finally, they left the canoes behind and had to continue on foot. It was midsummer when the expedition first saw the shining peaks of the Rocky Mountains. Sacagawea was thrilled to be so close to home. Even after 5 long years, the rocky buttes and spires looked familiar. Even little Pomp, the baby, was awed to silence by the strange scenery. Finally, Sacagawea recognized the pass that her people called the Gateway to the Mountains, and led Lewis and Clark's men through it. With every step, the soldiers sensed that hidden eyes were watching them. Captain Lewis decided to hurry ahead with a scouting party of 3 men, hoping that his smaller band might draw the Shoshone out of hiding. Four days later, a party of 60 mounted warriors in full battle dress rode upon Lewis and his scouts. These painted horsemen looked as fierce and merciless as death itself. Louis handed his rifle to Druyere and bravely stepped forward, holding out the company's best flag as a friendship offering. The leader of the Shoshone dismounted and took the flag. Pronouncing it a most fitting present, he embraced Captain Louis as a sign of friendship. Quickly now, the white soldiers were escorted to the Shoshone village. Louis observed horses grazing in every direction around the village. As night fell, green boughs and antelope skins were laid on the ground in a circle, and the ceremonial pipe brought forth. Shoshone women brought the hungry soldiers bowls of roasted fish. Louis was thrilled to see that it was pink salmon, for this told him that the Columbia River was not far away. Two days later, Clark and the others caught up and were led into the village by Shoshone horsemen. The news that Sacagawea had come with the whites raced through the village like lightning. The Shoshone chief sent for her, because the great dignity of his position required him to receive visitors in his own lodge. Sacagawea stepped lightly inside and was about to sit when, in the person of the chief, she recognized her own brother, Sacagawea. Sobbing, she flew to embrace him, but the sweet joy of her tears soon mingled with bitter waters of grief, for Sacagawea now learned that her mother and father were dead, and all her brothers and sisters too, except Sacagawea, who was now chief. In the days that followed, the white soldiers and the Shoshone smoked many pipes and took their moccasins off around the council fire to show that they could be trusted like family. Sacagawea spoke in the familiar tongue of her girlhood, and the stories flowed out of her like the water of the Snake River flows out of the Rocky Mountains. Afterward, the captains directed Cruzat to play his fiddle, to the great amusement of the Shoshone, who thought the soldiers danced like bears. Now came the most delicate business. Sacagawea conveyed a request from Captain Louis to her brother. The expedition desperately needed horses to get through the mountains. Would the Shoshone sell some? All their wealth was in their ponies. The chief pondered for one sleep, 2 sleeps. Sell them the ponies, brother, Sacagawea advised him. Soon other whites will follow and help the Shoshone defeat our enemies. The chief finally agreed, although they received in return only a few shabby uniform jackets, some knives, leggings, and a billet of blue glass beads. Sacagawea went with the whites, for one of them was her husband, and the life of an explorer was now her life too. Her brother understood. He could not help but like these white men, who were polite and trustworthy and treated his people with respect. It was now a hard passage through the high country. The trail soared into the mountains, where the thin air made their hearts pound and their lungs heave. Clouds hung low in the twisted treetops and obscured the path ahead, but at every turn, Sacagawea pointed the way. Rain soon turned to sleet, hail, and finally snow. There was no food. Everyone was miserable. Sacagawea's little boy cried with hunger. At night, around the roaring fire, she sang to him about the buffalo, and her sweet voice filled him up like a great feast. Once past the many rapids of the Columbia River, the expedition picked up speed, often floating 50 miles a day in their canoes toward the ultimate goal, the ocean. Pelicans, cormorants, gulls, and other seabirds began to appear in great flocks. They met people who had brass kettles, muskets, cloth blankets, and other trade objects that they could only have gotten from sea-going ships. Then, at long last, on the 8th of November, 1805, a gray and drizzly day, the expedition caught sight of the ocean. Sacagawea, with little Pomp on her back, stood on the beach alongside her husband and all the white soldiers and gazed in wonder at the watery horizon. Never had Sacagawea seen such an immensity of emptiness. Not even the flattest part of the prairie where the Pawnees lived compared to it. The Lewis and Clark expedition spent the winter of 1805 on the Pacific coast, near the mouth of the Columbia River. The following spring, when the melting snows of the Rockies flowed once again toward the sea, the company set off for their homes far away in the east. Sacagawea and Charbonneau returned with them, at least as far as the Mandan settlements in the state now called North Dakota. Sacagawea never roamed so far again. She lived nearly 100 years, well after the iron horse and the telegraph crossed the prairie. And the buffalo were almost gone, and her people scattered to the four winds. Without the help of Sacagawea, the wilderness surely would have swallowed up Lewis and Clark and all their brave men. But history records that every one of the soldiers who set out for the Pacific from the Mandan village in 1805 returned home alive, and the tale of their glorious deeds lives forever after.